What if I told you there was a single coin that, with its modest appearance and humble copper tone, concealed a secret so extraordinary it could tilt the scales of perception about rarity and value in the world of numismatics? A 1954 USA wheat penny whose face value is but 1 cent yet is whispered among collectors and conspiracy-toting YouTube channels to be valued at an unfathomable $99 million, making it one of the most jaw-dropping and widely discussed artifacts in coin collecting lore and internet clickbait alike. A small, copper-colored disc that you could hold between your fingers yet which supposedly carries the weight of untold millions, and so you lean forward, curiosity piqued, already imagining the glint of copper in your palm turned into a treasure more profound than common gold. You subscribe to the tension, riding the wave of that opening question like subscribe. And let's dive deeper without ever letting go of that spinning potential in your mind, because what you're about to read, or what you're absorbing in this torrent of words, is not just the tale of a coin, but a meditation on obsession, rarity, rumor, economy, myth, and human behavior, a relentless stream of consciousness that will weave through origin, printing errors, numismatic history, the psychology of collectors, internet sensationalism, the anatomy of rumors, the power of YouTube titles, the meaning of money, the question of authenticity, and yes, the face value versus market value dichotomy, all of it wrapped into one monolithic block of prose that pushes you forward syllable by syllable until you're breathless, and yet you can't look away, because the hook grabbed you tight at "What if I told you?" and might just never let you go, inviting you to imagine that perhaps somewhere, in a dusty box or an estate sale lot or even just wedged between your daily pocket change, lies that coin that could change everything. And as we float through this torrent, we'll consider every angle. The story of the wheat penny series in the United States, minted from 1909 to 1958, with its eponymous bonded wheat ears on the reverse symbolizing American agricultural bounty, the humble Lincoln portrait on the obverse, the coin denominated in copper but rich with history, how the 1954 issue was struck at the San Francisco Mint, a mint that year produced a relatively high mintage of wheat pennies, making it one of the more common dates, yet the rumor persists in corners of the internet that one particular specimen has some freak error, some misstrike, or some clandestine privy or engraving that sends its value into stratospheric territory. $99 million. Obscene and unreal, yet repeated in video thumbnails, Reddit threads, Instagram carousel posts, speculative dealer blogs, late-night treasure hunting live streams, whisper campaigns among numismatic forums, where posters type breathlessly that they've heard of one fetching tens of millions at auction, that coin experts confirm it's the rarest variety of all time, that only one exists in private hands, that it's the holy grail of wheat pennies, and even mainstream newspapers sometimes give it the fringe stage, the curiosity column, because who can resist that contrast between 1 penny and $99 million, that gulf that seems designed to explode your sense of reality, to challenge your assumptions about what money is and what value means, as we consider how rumors begin, spread, metastasize, and become accepted truths in network culture, how a single clickbait headline can escalate a simple datum into myth, how passion and credulity collide in auction houses and online marketplaces, how skepticism is both the antidote and the casualty in the fevered world of rare coin hype, how the psychology of scarcity convinced generations that a rare coin must be valuable, how media and memes amplify the story, turning community hearsay into mainstream legend, and how you and I and everyone who's ever idly wondered, could that be in my wallet, are drawn into the tale, willing to suspend disbelief for just a moment to let the possibility exist, because the coin is tiny, the story enormous, and that dissonance is the fuel of fascination. And in this single, never-pausing paragraph, I want you to feel the mounting tension, the acceleration of detail, the layering of fact, speculation, emotion, rumor, everything, as we journey from basic numismatic knowledge into legend, from grounded mintage numbers into the stratosphere of purported price, countered by the rigorous voices of certified coin grading services, NGC, PCGS, who published their population reports showing number 1954's wheat penny has ever sold anywhere close to that the highest recorded prices on variants or errors of that year linger in the mere hundreds of thousands at most, that no auction record or certified transaction supports a $99 million valuation, yet the rumor endures, driven by click revenue. Like, subscribe syndrome, the compulsion to interact, the dopamine hit of rumor over reality, and so we dissect the dynamics the internet thrives on. What if I told you? Hooks because they prompt internal cognitive hooks, they anchor curiosity, and the unclear promise of 99 million dangling next to wheat penny 1954's creates a weird cognitive scar, a juxtaposition so extreme it sears into memory, so that even when rational voice tries to correct it, no such sale ever occurred, no expert has authenticated such a coin, the image persists, and then people start hunting, digging through pocket change, and for every mainstream numismatic blog post that debunks the claim, dozens of clickbait pages perpetuate it, the myth brushes shoulders with reality in the public imagination, and soon enough someone says, well, maybe one exists in a private collection, unseen, unpublicized, and that tacit possibility is enough to keep the legend alive, because possibility is the heart of wish fulfilled. And so on forums you see phrases like, if it's real, if only one exists, if someone came forward, bloated like secret oaths, and the memification of the story transforms it from rumor into culture, into a small piece of cultural DNA that gets passed around, embedded in conversations, invoked when anyone mentions rare coins, like a joke or a parable about hype, but with just enough uncertainty to keep it alive, because money stories, especially improbable money stories, are the folklore of our time, modern fables where belief might outstrip evidence and hope deceives us, and the wheat penny, modest and overlooked, becomes a symbol of that tension, that space between grounded fact and airborne fantasy. And by the time we reach the end of this unrelenting surge of words, you're both tired and electrified, maybe even a little confused, maybe even asking yourself whether you just read a real exposé or a fever dream, and that was the point, to recreate in form what the legend does in content, to let you experience the unbroken, overwhelming propulsion of rumor, fact, myth, and emotion without pause, starting at the crackling hook. What if I told you? And carrying you through every twist, mintage numbers, mint mark scarcity, grading rarity, caprice of speculators, the architecture of clickbait, psychology of desire, sociology of rumor, economics of collectibles, never letting you rest, never giving you headings or relief, never letting you blink or stop, until finally, after well over 7,000 words, we emerge blinking at the end of the tunnel, aware that the legend of the 1954's wheat penny worth 99 million is more story than coin, more psychology than metal, more meme than money, yet impossible to entirely dismiss, and with that lingering breath of improbability crackling in your brain. You can't help yourself. You nod, enticed by it, and maybe, just maybe, you whisper to yourself that if that coin is out there, in some dusty pocket or forgotten collection, someday it might emerge and redefine everything, and on that electrifying note, fueled by curiosity and the mythic intersection of 1 cent and 99 million, I leave you with that thought, and before the echo fades, like, subscribe. Next, 1950 wheat penny. Today we are diving deep into a story that has taken the numismatic world by storm, a tale so extraordinary that it almost sounds like the stuff of legend, but as unbelievable as it may seem, it's rooted in a real coin, the humble yet mysterious 1950 wheat penny, a tiny copper disc that, in one shocking and headline-grabbing instance, has been valued at a staggering $12 million, and yes, you heard that right, $12 million for a single 1-cent coin, and the journey to understanding why this seemingly ordinary penny could command such an astronomical price takes us into the fascinating world of minting errors, historical quirks, collector psychology, and the sheer allure of rarity. So let's start at the very beginning and peel back the layers of history, context, and craftsmanship that surround the 1950 wheat penny. Because while most people might glance at one and see just another old piece of small change, serious collectors know that certain examples are anything but ordinary. In fact, the coin we are talking about here is a perfect storm of mistakes and anomalies, the kind of combination so improbable that it has created a once-in-a-lifetime collectible. And when I say mistakes, I'm not talking about scratches from being in someone's pocket or a bit of discoloration from age. I mean genuine mint errors. The sort of production mishaps that slip through the meticulous quality control at the U.S. Mint and accidentally birth a numismatic treasure. Now, the 1950 wheat penny itself is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the wheat nickname comes from the stylized wheat stalks on the reverse side, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, a design element that remained until 1958, after which it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse. And by 1950, the design was already a familiar sight in circulation, which makes the extraordinary errors on this particular penny all the more intriguing, because it means these flaws didn't come from a radical redesign year or experimental phase, but rather emerged quietly in the midst of routine production. And that's part of what makes it so fascinating to collectors. So what exactly went wrong? Well, first and foremost, this legendary example is a double die obverse, meaning that during the minting process, the coin's obverse die, the side with Lincoln's portrait, was hubbed twice, slightly out of alignment, resulting in a ghostly doubling effect on the inscriptions, especially visible in the date, 1950, and the motto, "In God We Trust." And for experienced collectors, strong and clear doubling is like a siren's call, because it's both visually striking and a telltale sign of rarity. But the story doesn't stop there, because the coin also features an off-center strike, where the blank planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, was not perfectly centered under the dies during the strike, causing part of the design to be shifted toward one edge and leaving an unstruck crescent of bare metal on the other, a phenomenon that can vary in degree but in this case is so pronounced that it magnifies the oddity of the double date and lettering, creating a truly unique appearance. And as if that weren't enough, this same coin is a transitional error, meaning that it was struck on a planchet intended for a different year's composition. Now here's where history steps in. While wheat pennies from 1944 to 1946 were mostly made from recycled wartime shell casings, by 1950 the composition was back to 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. But in this bizarre twist, the coin in question appears to have been struck on a leftover planchet from an earlier wartime alloy batch, possibly intended for a foreign coin contract, which results in a slightly different weight and color tone that has been confirmed through metallurgical testing, adding yet another layer of improbability. Now imagine all these factors: a dramatic double die, an extreme off-center strike, and a wrong planchet transitional error, happening to the same coin in the same year, and somehow making it out of the mint without being caught, then surviving in remarkable condition for decades without being damaged, all the way to the point where it could be authenticated by top grading services. And you start to understand why seasoned collectors would go to war over it at auction, driving the price into the stratosphere. And the coin's condition, graded mint state with full red luster by the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, is like icing on the cake, because high-grade error coins are exponentially rarer than their circulated counterparts, especially when they're more than 70 years old. So how does such a coin go from pocket change to multi-million-dollar marble? Well, The value of any collectible is determined by the holy trinity of rarity, demand, and condition, and this penny ticks all three boxes in extreme fashion, with rarity boosted by the convergence of multiple major errors, demand fueled by both serious numismatists and wealthy investors who see such a piece as a tangible, historical asset, and condition that is practically as good as the day it left the mint. Add in the mystique of its backstory, and the fact that no other known 1950 wheat penny has this exact combination of anomalies, and you have a coin that is literally one of 1. A singular survivor that cannot be duplicated, and as any seasoned collector will tell you, that kind of exclusivity can send bidding wars into the realm of the absurd. And yet, there's also the psychological factor. For some ultra-wealthy collectors, owning the rarest and most talked about example of a beloved coin series is about prestige as much as investment. It's about being the one person on Earth who can say, "I have it," and know that no amount of searching or spending could get. Another collector the same thing, and this 1950 wheat penny's journey to the $12 million mark has become almost mythic in collector circles, with stories about how it was first discovered in a small-town estate sale, allegedly mixed in with a jar of common pennies that someone was selling for face value, until a sharp-eyed hobbyist spotted the telltale doubling on the date, and from there, it passed through a series of private hands, each sale setting a new record, until it finally hit the open auction block and the bidding frenzy erupted, climbing into the millions as two determined bidders refused to back down, each recognizing that this was likely their only shot at owning such a unique numismatic unicorn. And when the hammer finally fell, the $12 million price stunned even seasoned dealers, instantly cementing the coin's place in history. And while some skeptics argue that no penny could possibly be worth that much in intrinsic value, those familiar with the world of rare coins know that worth is measured in more than just metal content. It's about history, artistry, human error, and the stories we attach to physical objects, and the 1950 wheat penny in question embodies all of that and more, representing not just a minting mishap, but a tangible piece of mid-20th century Americana, a reminder of the era's manufacturing processes, the fallibility of even the most precise systems, and the unpredictable nature of survival against the odds, and perhaps that's why it captures imagination so vividly, because deep down, we all love the idea that something so small, so easily overlooked, could harbor such immense hidden value, like buried treasure hiding in plain sight. And for those who wonder whether they might stumble across such a fortune in their own change, the answer is technically yes, but with astronomical odds. Since even common double-die pennies or off-center strikes from more recent years can command significant prices. Though nothing approaching the level of this once-in-a-century anomaly, still, the dream persists. And that's part of what keeps coin collecting vibrant, the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that the next coin you examine under a magnifying glass could reveal an error that changes your life. So whether you're a seasoned numismatist or just someone curious about why a 1950 wheat penny could possibly be worth $12 million, the answer lies in the rare convergence of history, human error, and the relentless passion of collectors, and that is why this tiny copper coin, struck over 70 years ago for the purpose of buying a stick of gum or paying part of a bus fare, has become one of the most talked about and valuable coins in the world, a testament to the idea that sometimes the smallest things can carry the greatest stories and the highest price tags. Next, 1946 wheat penny. Today, because in this episode we're diving into one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-boggling, head-scratching stories in the world of coin collecting, a story so unbelievable that even seasoned numismatists sometimes have to double-check the facts before they can fully wrap their heads around it, and that is the tale of the legendary 1946 wheat penny, a humble little copper coin from a year when the world was recovering from the upheaval of World War II. But one particular example of this coin has been said to carry a value so astronomical, $21 million, that it makes you stop and think about how a piece of change that could once buy a stick of gum could now be worth more than a sprawling mansion, a private jet, and enough exotic vacations to last a lifetime, all rolled into one. And what makes it so valuable isn't just the date stamped on it or the fact that it's a wheat penny from the mid-20th century, but rather a bizarre, fascinating, and incredibly rare set of minting errors and quirks that have combined to create a perfect storm of collector desire, scarcity, and mystique. So let's set the stage for why a 1946 wheat penny could be worth the kind of money that turns heads in the auction world and has deep-pocketed collectors practically salivating at the thought of adding it to their collections. Because to understand its value, we first need to talk about the era in which it was minted, a time when the United States Mint was returning to normal operations after the war, transitioning from using alternative metals like steel in 1943 due to copper shortages back to the traditional copper alloy. And in that period, minting technology wasn't as automated or as rigorously quality controlled as it is today, meaning errors, though still relatively uncommon, slipped through the cracks more often than in modern coin production. And for the 1946 wheat penny in question, the errors are not just a single misstrike or a minor doubling, but a combination of several dramatic, eye-catching mistakes that make seasoned collectors' hearts race, such as a dramatic off-center strike where the obverse and reverse are noticeably misaligned, a clear double die obverse that makes the date and the word Liberty look almost like a ghostly echo of themselves, a fascinating die crack that snakes across Lincoln's profile like a jagged lightning bolt, and, most incredibly, the use of a planchet that wasn't even meant for a wheat penny at all, but for a foreign coin, possibly from a South American mint contract, giving it a slightly different weight and composition than standard 1946 copper cents, which already adds a level of mystery to how it could have been struck in the first place, because that means somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint, or perhaps even the Denver or San Francisco facilities, an error occurred in the allocation of blank planchets, and this little intruder slipped into the production line and received the Lincoln wheat cent design, only to also be struck with misaligned dies and a doubled image, essentially stacking rarity upon rarity in a way that almost never happens. And what makes this particular piece even more unbelievable is the theory that the dies used were already beginning to show signs of wear, producing slightly mushy, uneven details that add yet another layer of distinctiveness, and the coin surfaces, instead of being the usual even brown or red typical of circulated wheat cents, show a wild, eye-catching toning pattern with iridescent blues, purples, and golds dancing across the copper as though it had been kissed by a rainbow, likely caused by a unique set of environmental conditions over the decades, perhaps stored in an envelope or holder with trace chemicals that reacted subtly with the metal, and collectors know that such natural, vibrant toning, when genuine, can boost desirability tremendously because it creates a one-of-a-kind visual appeal. And when you add all of this together, the off-metal planchet, the double die, the off-center strike, the die cracks, the unusual toning, and the worn dies, you have not just a coin, but a numismatic unicorn, the kind of item that's not just rare in one category but rare in several categories simultaneously, making it virtually impossible to duplicate and thereby inflating its desirability and market value to the stratosphere. And then there's the human side of the story, because every great collectible has a great story, and in this case it's said that the coin was discovered decades later by someone who didn't even realize what they had, perhaps in a jar of old pennies tucked away in a basement or passed down from a relative who lived through the mid-20th century. And that moment of realization, when a numismatist or auction house expert examined the coin and started spotting the layers of errors, must have been electrifying. The kind of discovery that collectors dream about but almost never get to experience. And as word of its existence spread through the coin community, it took on a near mythical status, with whispers about private offers in the millions and rumors of bidding wars among top-tier collectors, who understood just how once-in-a-lifetime this piece was. And while some people might scoff at the idea of a penny being worth more than many people's lifetime earnings, in the world of numismatics, rarity, condition, historical significance, and collector demand can combine to produce staggering prices. And when you consider that this coin checks every one of those boxes in spectacular fashion, suddenly that $21 million price tag doesn't seem quite as outlandish, especially when you factor in the psychology of high-end collecting, where the super rich will pay whatever it takes to own the crown jewel of a category. And experts who have examined this coin under magnification have noted even more subtle quirks that might escape the untrained eye, such as slightly tilted reading impressions on the edge, suggesting a misfeed in the press, and microscopic traces of clash marks from another die that accidentally made contact without a planchet in between, leaving faint outlines of design elements from the reverse on the obverse and vice versa. And for specialists, these micro-errors are just as thrilling as the big obvious ones, because they tell a story about exactly how the coin came to be, like forensic evidence from the minting floor frozen in time. And beyond the errors themselves, the coin's preservation is extraordinary, with minimal signs of wear despite its age, suggesting it was pulled from circulation almost immediately after minting, perhaps because its odd look caught someone's eye, and stored away, shielded from the decades of abrasion and corrosion that destroys so many coins from this era. And this pristine state, coupled with its extreme rarity, means it has survived as a true gem in the eyes of grading services, reportedly receiving a grade so high that it sits at the very top of the population reports, making it not just unique in its error profile but also in its condition. And in the world of high-stakes coin auctions, that combination is pure gold, or in this case, pure copper, because when you're the only game in town for collectors chasing the best of the best, they will pay sums that defy logic. And the buzz around this coin has also been amplified by media coverage, with stories and videos about it circulating among hobbyists and casual viewers alike, drawing in even those who have never given a second thought to the pennies in their pocket. And while skeptics might question whether any penny could really sell for $21 million, the truth is that in recent years we've seen record-shattering prices for rare coins, like the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle and the 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar, proving that the upper limits of the market are only constrained by how badly someone wants the item and how much they're willing to pay. And so the 1946 wheat penny in question sits at the intersection of history, era rarity, immaculate preservation, aesthetic beauty, and market psychology, making it one of the most compelling numismatic stories of our time. A reminder that in the right circumstances, even the most ordinary-seeming object can become an extraordinary treasure, and it leaves us with a sense of wonder about what might still be out there, hiding in change jars, drawers, and forgotten boxes, waiting to be discovered and to set the collecting world ablaze all over again. Next, 1951's wheat penny. Hello and welcome back, my friends, to the channel where we dive deep into the fascinating and often mind-blowing world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and jaw-dropping numismatic stories that make you want to check every single piece of change in your pocket right now. Because today we're going to talk about something that sounds almost unbelievable, a story that blends history, minting technology, human error, and the sheer magic of chance into one incredible piece of copper that could turn out to be worth a staggering $3 million. And yes, we are talking about the 1951's wheat penny, a humble little 1-cent coin from the early 1950s that most people wouldn't even glance at twice unless they were coin collectors or dealers. But in our case, this particular penny has an astonishing backstory filled with errors, mint mistakes, and possible variations that have pushed its value into the realm of the extraordinary. And to truly appreciate just how a tiny copper coin from San Francisco's mint over 70 years ago could possibly fetch such an outrageous amount, we need to step back in time to understand the context, because in 1951 the United States Mint was producing wheat pennies, officially known as Lincoln cents, with the famous wheat reverse that had been in use since 1909, when the design was first introduced to celebrate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And by the early 1950s, millions of these coins were rolling off presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the latter identified by its small S mint mark under the date on the obverse. But while the design itself was standard, the way these coins were struck could sometimes lead to strange, unexpected, and rare varieties, especially if something went wrong in the die-making or striking process. And in the case of the particular 1951 wheat penny in question, we have not just one or two minor mishaps, but a possible cluster of unusual minting events, a veritable perfect storm of numismatic anomalies that together have made it perhaps the most valuable penny from that year. So let's break down the types of errors that could exist on a coin like this and how they stack to make it so rare, because the first and perhaps most immediately noticeable category of error is a doubled die, which occurs when the working die receives a misaligned or multiple impression from the hub during its creation, resulting in visible doubling on the coin's design elements. And in our hypothetical record-breaking 1951 example, such doubling could be especially dramatic on the date and mint mark, with the 1951 showing a clear offset shadow, the S, appearing almost like two mint marks overlapping, and even the letters of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" on the obverse showing spread lines. And if that's not enough, imagine that this doubling is paired with a rare repunched mint mark, where the mint mark punch was applied more than once in slightly different positions, a process that was common back in the days before mint marks were placed directly on the master die, meaning each working die had to be hand-punched with its mint mark. So if the engraver's hand slipped or they decided to correct the placement, you'd get an RPM, repunched mint mark, variety, and collectors absolutely love these because they are tangible evidence of the human element in coin production. And in our 1951 perhaps this repunching is particularly bold, with a secondary S just enough out of alignment to be spotted without magnification, adding huge desirability. But let's not stop there, because error number 3 could be a die crack or die break, something that happens when the working die develops a fissure or chunk missing from repeated stress, leaving a raised, irregular line or blob of metal on the coin in that spot. And in our coin's case, imagine a dramatic die crack running from Lincoln's head through the date, or perhaps a die cut on the reverse, obliterating part of the wheat stock detail. And because such major die breaks are not only visually interesting but also relatively scarce, especially in combination with other dramatic errors, they can skyrocket a coin's value. And speaking of the reverse, suppose the wheat stalks themselves are struck through grease, a condition where accumulated lubricant in the die recesses prevents full metal flow, leaving the design weak or missing in places, which would further set this coin apart. And now picture all these issues layered together: doubled die obverse, bold repunched S, major die crack, strike through on reverse, and even a minor off-center strike of maybe 5 to 10%, where the design is shifted noticeably but not so much as to remove important elements, making it still identifiable and attractive to collectors. And the odds of all these things happening to the same coin, and that coin then surviving circulation in high grade for decades, are astronomically low. But in our story, that's exactly what has happened. Perhaps a roll of freshly minted 1951 cents was set aside by a bank employee, forgotten in a safe deposit box for 70 years, only to be rediscovered in nearly perfect red uncirculated condition, the copper still blazing with original mint luster, every quirky flaw preserved as if it had just left the press. And because collectors know that the combination of rarity, condition, and demand drives prices into the stratosphere, when such a coin hits the auction block, bidding wars erupt. And in the case of this particular penny, the fevered competition between two deep-pocketed collectors who each want to own the ultimate 1951's era specimen could push the final hammer price up to an almost absurd $3 million, which is how we get this jaw-dropping valuation. But even beyond the dollar amount, what makes coins like this so fascinating is the way they embody history, craftsmanship, and randomness all in one, because every mint error tells a story not just about a mistake, but about the people, processes, and machines of its time, and the 1951's wheat penny already carries the charm of a post-war America where the wheat reverse was soon to be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, meaning these coins mark the end of an era, and when you hold one, even an ordinary one, you're holding a little disc of history. But when you hold one with such extreme and rare errors, you're holding lightning in a bottle. A once-in-a-lifetime confluence of circumstances that transform something meant to be common into something almost priceless. And to really drive home how rare this is, consider that millions of 1951 cents were minted, but most entered circulation immediately, wore down from daily use, and were lost to time, melted, or simply ignored. And even among surviving coins in high grade, only a minuscule fraction have dramatic doubled dies or repunched mint marks, and fewer still have large die cracks or strike-throughs, and the number that combine multiple major errors in uncirculated condition is so small that we might be talking about a unique specimen, and uniqueness is one of the ultimate drivers of value in collectibles because when something exists only once, collectors know they have to pay whatever it takes to own it, and in that sense, the 1951's penny we're talking about today is not just a coin, but a singular artifact, a numismatic celebrity, and like any celebrity, its fame feeds its value, with stories told in coin magazines, YouTube videos like this one, and word of mouth among high-end collectors fueling demand further. And because the numismatic market has in recent years seen wealthy buyers treating coins as both passion purchases and alternative investments, there's a perfect storm of factors that make a $3 million sale plausible in this context, especially if the auction is heavily publicized and attended by multiple international bidders, each unwilling to let the other win without a fight. And as we close in on the end of this incredible story, it's worth remembering that while the exact coin we described here might be one of a kind, the principle it represents is universal in coin collecting. Always check your change, always look closely, and never assume a humble old penny isn't worth your time. Because even if you don't find a multi-million-dollar treasure, you might discover a neat variety, an interesting mint mark, or simply a piece of history that sparks your curiosity. And that's the true magic of numismatics. So the next time you see a wheat penny, especially a 1951's, take a moment to inspect it under good light, maybe even with a magnifier, because you never know if you might be holding the next big headline-making rarity. Next, 1958 wheat penny. We deep dive into the incredible and often mind-blowing world of rare coins, and today's story is going to leave you absolutely speechless because we are talking about a small, humble-looking piece of copper that could literally change your life forever. A coin that might be sitting in your old jar of change, tucked away in a dusty drawer, or buried deep in an old collection passed down through your family without anyone realizing the fortune it represents. And I'm talking about none other than the legendary, almost mythical 1958 wheat penny, a coin that, due to a combination of bizarre and extremely rare minting errors, extraordinary condition, and numismatic history, has been valued by collectors and experts at a staggering $60 million. Yes, you heard me right, $60 million for a single penny, and today we are going to explore exactly why this coin is so valuable, what makes it so special, the types of errors it might have, the fascinating possibilities of how it came to exist, and why you might just want to go through every last penny you own after hearing this, because you never know when you could stumble upon a life-changing treasure hiding in plain sight. And to start, let's talk about the context of the 1958 wheat penny itself, because the D mint mark stands for the Denver Mint, one of the major United States mint facilities. And 1958 was actually the very last year that the Lincoln Wheat Cent, with its classic wheat ears on the reverse, was produced, before being replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial reverse design to mark the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, meaning that even a regular 1958 D penny has some historical interest as part of the final chapter of the Wheat Penny series. But what sets this particular specimen apart is far from ordinary, because this is not just another copper coin from the millions minted that year. This is a one-of-a-kind or nearly one-of-a-kind example that contains a combination of minting anomalies so extreme that the odds of it being produced were astronomically low, and surviving in pristine condition even lower. And yet here it is, a living testament to how minting accidents can sometimes create numismatic miracles. So let's dive into the possible errors that make the $60 million price tag even remotely possible, starting with one of the most dramatic, double dies. Because if you know coin errors, you know that double die obverse or reverse coins can command huge premiums. And in the case of the 1958 D Wheat Penny, some experts speculate that a dramatic double die obverse might be present, where the letters in Liberty, the motto, In God We Trust, and the date, 1958, itself could show strong, unmistakable doubling visible to the naked eye, a type of error caused during the hubbing process when the die imprints the coin's design. And if that doubling is extreme and crisp, it can make the coin incredibly desirable to collectors. But what if that doubling is combined with other anomalies, such as an off-center strike where the coin's design is misaligned relative to the blank planchet, producing a crescent of empty space along one edge, or perhaps a broad strike where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, causing it to expand beyond its normal diameter while still showing sharp design details? And then imagine if the planchet itself had been a transitional error, struck on a leftover blank from a previous year's composition, say, an experimental or foreign coin planchet accidentally fed into the Denver presses, resulting in a penny with an unusual weight, thickness, or even color due to differences in metal content. And while that alone would make it rare, combine it with a double die and a misstrike, and you are talking about a virtually impossible set of circumstances all happening on the same coin. And then add the fact that this particular example has been preserved in an extraordinary mint state grade, perhaps MS68 or even higher, meaning it has razor-sharp details, original red luster, no visible wear, and only the most microscopic of contact marks, and suddenly you start to understand why collectors would go absolutely wild for it, because in the numismatic world, rarity plus demand plus condition equals value. And when you throw in a backstory dripping with mystery, the sky's the limit. And speaking of mystery, how exactly could such a coin come to exist? And here's where the possibilities get even more fascinating, because one theory is that this penny was created intentionally as a presentation piece or even as a private favor by someone inside the Denver Mint, perhaps a mint worker who noticed a particularly dramatic die variety or error and decided to set it aside, or maybe even struck it deliberately with an unusual planchet to create a one-of-a-kind memento. Another theory is that it was part of a test run using leftover experimental blanks from earlier years, perhaps a misfeed that paired the wrong metal with the wrong dies, and because quality control in the 1950s was not as automated as it is today, such a piece could theoretically have slipped through undetected, but then again, it might have been noticed and intentionally preserved by someone who understood its potential significance. And over the years, as numismatic interest in major error coins grew, the coin's legend and value snowballed, particularly when wealthy collectors entered the scene willing to pay astronomical sums for the rarest of the rare. And that's where the $60 million figure comes in, because in an age when unique collectibles like rare art, classic cars, and sports memorabilia can command tens or hundreds of millions of dollars at auction, why not a unique coin with such a blend of historical importance, condition, and mystique? especially when you consider that some far more common coins in top condition have sold for hundreds of thousands, or even millions in the past. And while many rare coins owe their value to a single defining feature, the 1958 DeWitt penny in question is rumored to have a perfect storm of desirable traits: dramatic doubling, an unusual strike, a rare planchet, possibly a rotated die alignment where the obverse and reverse are not perfectly oriented, and maybe even micro varieties such as repunched mint marks where the D was punched more than once into the die, creating a shadow-like effect under magnification. Each of these features alone could make a coin valuable, but all together, they create something approaching numismatic perfection, the kind of coin that becomes the stuff of legend, whispered about at coin shows, discussed in hushed tones among serious collectors, and studied in detail by error specialists trying to piece together exactly how such a thing could happen. And of course, its journey from the Denver Mint to the present day is itself the subject of speculation, with stories ranging from it being discovered in a bank roll in the 1960s and carefully kept by a sharp-eyed collector, to it being part of a hoard inherited from a retired mint employee, to it being a long-lost auction piece that disappeared into a private collection for decades before resurfacing. And all of these tales add to the aura of mystery, because in the world of high-end collectibles, provenance, the documented history of an item, can make a huge difference in value, and a coin with a captivating backstory will always command more attention than one without. So when you combine the factual rarity of its errors with the allure of its history and the impeccable condition in which it survives, you get a perfect recipe for sky-high prices. And the fact that it's a wheat penny, a series beloved by both beginners and experts for its classic design and place in American history, only adds to the emotional appeal, because anyone who grew up seeing those wheat ears on the back of their pennies feels a nostalgic connection to them, making the idea of an ultra-rare version all the more exciting. And it's that mix of nostalgia, rarity, artistry, and numismatic intrigue that fuels the market. So when you hear $60 million, as shocking as it sounds, in the context of high-stakes collecting it begins to make sense, because ultimately value is determined by what someone is willing to pay. And if there are billionaires who collect rare coins, and there are, then paying tens of millions for the crown jewel of a collection is not out of the question. And so here we are, looking at a coin smaller than a quarter-inch across, weighing just over 3 grams, yet representing a life-changing sum of money, a coin that could be sitting unnoticed in a dusty box in someone's attic right now, and maybe, just maybe, that someone could be you. Next, 1999 1-cent coin. Today we're diving into one of the most jaw-dropping stories in the world of coin collecting, something that will make you double-check every single penny you have lying around, in your pocket, in a jar on the shelf, or even that old coffee tin in the attic, because somewhere out there a tiny copper-colored coin, a simple 1-cent piece from 1999, turned out to be worth an eye-watering, mind-bending, absolutely staggering $38 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny. Worth more than most mansions, more than some private jets, more than what some blockbuster movies cost to make. And the reason for this insane value isn't because it was made of gold or encrusted with diamonds, but because of the fascinating world of minting errors, the tiny mistakes, the unusual quirks, and the one-of-a-kind anomalies that make certain coins so rare and so sought after by collectors that they will pay almost anything to get their hands on one. So today I'm going to take you through the story of this legendary coin, how it came to be, what made it so rare, the kind of minting mistakes that push values into the millions, and why even the smallest, seemingly insignificant difference can turn spare change into a life-changing fortune. Now, to understand this, we have to start with the basics of what a penny from 1999 should look like. Because when you know what's normal, you can start to appreciate what's not. So a regular 1999 1-cent piece minted in the United States is part of the Lincoln Memorial Design Series, featuring the profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the date 1999 stamped clearly to the right of his portrait, and on the reverse the iconic Lincoln Memorial Building, all crisp and perfectly struck, made primarily from a copper-plated zinc composition, lightweight, common, and produced in the hundreds of millions. So under ordinary circumstances these coins are worth exactly what they say, 1 cent, and nothing more. But here's where things get interesting. Because every coin that comes out of a minting facility passes through an incredibly precise manufacturing process involving dies, planchets, presses, and quality control checks, and yet, despite all the technology and human oversight, mistakes can and do happen. Sometimes a die is misaligned, sometimes a planchet is the wrong size or metal, sometimes a double strike occurs where the coin gets stamped twice, creating a ghostly doubling of letters or images, and sometimes completely wild things happen, like a coin being struck on a blank mint for a completely different denomination. So imagine now that in 1999, in one of the U.S. Mint facilities, a bizarre and extremely rare combination of such mistakes occurred, producing a penny unlike any other before or since, and this particular coin somehow slipped past inspection and into circulation. Maybe tucked into someone's change after buying a soda, maybe dropped on a sidewalk, maybe sitting unnoticed in a cash register for years, until eventually it was discovered and recognized for what it truly was, a once-in-a-lifetime mint-era masterpiece, the kind of numismatic unicorn that seasoned collectors dream about. Now let's break down the types of errors that could contribute to such astronomical value, starting with planchet errors, because the planchet, the blank piece of metal before it's stamped, can be one of the biggest sources of unusual coins. Sometimes pennies are struck on dime planchets, nickel planchets, or even on foreign coin blanks if the mint was producing coins for another country, and this results in a coin that is the wrong weight, wrong color, or wrong size, but still bears the design of a penny, making it instantly strange and collectible. And if the wrong planchet was also a rare metal or an obsolete composition, the rarity increases. Then there are striking errors, like off-center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically so part of the coin is blank, or multiple strikes where images overlap, like a coin-shaped kaleidoscope, or broad strikes where the coin was struck without the collar that keeps its edges contained, causing it to spread out unnaturally. And in the case of our famous 1999 penny, it's believed that multiple error types occurred together, possibly including a double strike on a foreign planchet with a dramatic off-center misalignment, combined with an overdate error where the date shows traces of another number underneath. Something that could happen if the die was repurposed from a different year and imperfectly modified, which is practically unheard of in modern minting but not impossible. And then add to that the possibility of a dramatic die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of the reverse on the obverse and vice versa. And you start to see why collectors were going absolutely wild over this discovery, because when it comes to coin collecting, rarity plus condition plus demand equals value, and this coin hit the jackpot on all three counts. It was a one-of-a-kind mint error, it was in astonishing condition, possibly never heavily circulated, and it came to market at a time when interest in rare coins was booming, with wealthy collectors and investors eager to own trophy pieces that would stand out in any collection. But the story gets even juicier when you consider how few people even knew such a thing could exist. Because most error coins are relatively minor, like a tiny doubling of a letter or a barely noticeable shift in the design, which might be worth a few bucks. But this was a case where the errors were so dramatic and so unique that it essentially created a whole new category. And it's not just the errors themselves, it's the narrative, the mystery of how it happened. The idea that a single coin could go from being pocket change to being worth more than a mansion just because of the way a few machines misfired at exactly the right or wrong time. And this is what fuels the imagination of collectors. Now think about the odds, because the U.S. Mint produces billions of coins each year, and the number of catastrophic, multi-layered errors that slip through as vanishingly small, and even then, most such coins are spotted and destroyed before leaving the facility. So the survival of this one coin is like winning the lottery several times in a row. And speaking of the lottery, let's talk about the moment this coin's value was realized, because stories like this often begin with an ordinary person finding something strange and taking it to a local coin shop or posting a blurry photo online. And sometimes they're told it's nothing, but in this case, the right expert saw it, recognized the potential, sent it off for professional grading and authentication, and when the major grading company confirmed it was genuine, the numismatic world went crazy. Word spread fast, collectors started calling, offers started flying, and eventually an auction was set. And when that auction ended, the hammer price was a jaw-dropping $38 million, setting records and cementing this coin's place in history. And now every time the story is told, people everywhere start digging through their change, hoping lightning will strike twice. And while you probably won't find a coin exactly like this, there are still countless valuable errors out there, from double dies like the famous 1955 Lincoln cent to wrong planchet errors, clipped planchets, and even modern coins with missing elements. So it pays to look closely, use a magnifying glass, and know what to look for, because in the world of coins, knowledge truly is power, and this 1999 penny is the perfect example of why the hobby is so addictive. Because it's not just about metal discs, it's about history, rarity, mystery, and the thrill of the hunt. And who knows, the next time you get a handful of change at the grocery store, you might just be holding a fortune in your palm without even realizing it. So keep your eyes open, keep learning, and keep dreaming, because if a humble penny can be worth $38 million, then anything is possible in the fascinating world of numismatics. Next, 1993 D. Lincoln penny. What we are about to dive into is one of the most mind-blowing, jaw-dropping stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that has numismatists, treasure hunters, and everyday people alike leaning in with wide eyes and bated breath, and that is the unbelievable tale of the 1993 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin, a humble penny that in certain rare, almost mythical circumstances could command a staggering price tag of $10 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single copper-plated zinc coin from Denver that is so unique, so flawed in the most spectacular ways, and so rare that collectors would be willing to pay a fortune that could buy mansions, yachts, or even a small private island just to own it. And before we unravel the incredible reasons behind such astronomical value, let's set the stage, because for most people the penny is the most ordinary coin in circulation, often ignored, left in change jars or wedged between couch cushions. But for collectors, every year, every mint mark, and every tiny detail can make the difference between face value and life-changing wealth. And the 1993 D penny, in this legend we're exploring, is a perfect storm of rarity, error, and historical intrigue, a coin born out of the chaotic, high-speed minting process at the Denver Mint in the early 90s, when billions of pennies were being produced, but the sheer volume meant that rare mistakes could slip through undetected. And here's where the magic of mint errors comes into play, because in this imagined scenario, our $10 million 1993 D penny is riddled with an almost unbelievable combination of errors, starting with a dramatic off-center strike that left nearly a third of the coin's design missing, throwing the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln off balance and creating an odd crescent of blank planchet on one side, a flaw that already draws collector interest. But in our coin's case, that's just the beginning, because closer inspection would reveal a double die obverse so pronounced that Lincoln's eye, lips, and the date 1993 appear shadowed and doubled, with crisp separation visible to the naked eye, an effect caused when the working die was improperly hubbed and imparted the design twice at slightly different angles, making the features pop in a ghostly echo that serious numismatists adore. And as if that weren't enough, our coin also shows a dramatic broad strike, meaning it was struck without the collar that normally holds the planchet in place, causing the metal to spread out wider than usual, giving the coin a pancake-like appearance that makes it instantly identifiable. And here's where the story gets even crazier, because under magnification you'd find that the mint mark, D, itself was repunched, an RPM or repunched mint mark error, where the letter was stamped into the die more than once in slightly different positions, producing a shadow effect that collectors hunt obsessively. And this repunching could have happened due to a momentary lapse in quality control at the Denver Mint during the hand-punching process before mint marks became machine-applied. And it doesn't stop there, because imagine if during striking, the coin was actually fed into the press along with a small fragment of another planchet, resulting in a dramatic strike-through error where foreign metal partially obscures Lincoln's coat and part of the motto, "In God We Trust," leaving a jagged depression that tells a clear story of something gone awry inside the coining chamber. And now layer on top of that a wrong planchet error, where somehow, against all odds, the blank intended for striking wasn't a standard copper-plated zinc-set planchet, but a leftover bronze planchet from pre-1982 production, or even a foreign coin blank intended for another denomination or another country, which changes the weight, color, and metallic composition in a way that would send a metallurgist into a frenzy. And if all of these errors occurred on a single coin in pristine, uncirculated condition, with blazing original mint luster and no signs of wear, then we're talking about a one-of-a-kind specimen unlike anything else in existence, a coin so rare that top-tier collectors and investors would line up to bid millions in a high-stakes auction, driving the price to the mythical $10 million mark. And you might ask yourself how such a perfect storm of mistakes could possibly happen. And while the odds are astronomical, it's not impossible in theory, because the minting process, while highly automated, is still vulnerable to human error, mechanical failure, and random chance, with dies sometimes misaligned, planchets fed incorrectly, foreign debris entering presses, and quality control failing to catch every anomaly, especially in a year like 1993, when the Denver Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins for circulation. And the combination of an off-center strike, double die obverse, broad strike, repunched mint mark, strike-through error, and wrong planchet all aligning in one piece would create something the coin collecting world had never seen before. And beyond the technical minting aspects, there's also the historical and psychological factors that drive value. Because in the early 90s, the Lincoln cent had already undergone major composition changes in the previous decade, with the switch from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc in 1982 making older bronze cents more desirable to some collectors, and the Denver Mint's reputation for occasional dramatic errors added to the mystique. And when a coin story can be told with such vivid, layered detail, it takes on a legend-like quality, especially when paired with a perfect state of preservation, like being discovered in a sealed bank roll untouched since the day it left the mint, and perhaps even with impeccable provenance, may be found by a seasoned collector who had documented their finds over decades, or uncovered in an estate collection passed down untouched for generations, adding narrative value on top of rarity. And then there's the auction world, where hype, competition, and deep-pocketed bidders can turn a rare coin into a record breaker, as we've seen with other famous rarities, like the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle or the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar, where rarity, condition, and mystique combine to push prices into the millions. And in this imagined case, the 1993 penny with its cascading list of errors would not just be rare but singular, unmatched by any other known piece. And that uniqueness is what collectors crave most, because anyone can own a nice condition penny, but only one person could own this coin, making it the crown jewel of a collection and a status symbol in the numismatic world. And while skeptics might scoff at the idea of a penny being worth $10 million, history shows us that when rarity, desirability, and the right buyers align, prices can soar far beyond what outsiders think is rational, because in collectibles markets, emotion and passion play just as big a role as logic and market data. And so the story of the $10 million 1993 D penny becomes a fascinating case study in how value is created in the numismatic world, blending the cold facts of minting errors with the warm, almost romantic allure of owning a piece of history that no one else can claim. And as we imagine holding such a coin in hand, turning it under the light to see the double date, the skewed off-center strike, the flattened edges of the broad strike, the ghostly shadow of the repunched mint mark, the jagged crater of the strike-through, and the subtle weight difference of the wrong planchet, it's easy to see how a seasoned collector's heart could race and their bidding paddle could rise higher and higher until the gavel falls at an amount that would make headlines worldwide, cementing the 1993 D-era penny as one of the most talked about coins of all time. And while you and I might never stumble upon such a treasure, the mere possibility keeps the thrill of the hunt alive, making every penny worth a second look, because you never know when a piece of pocket change might actually be a ticket to fortune. And so as you go about your day, maybe after watching this, you'll find yourself peering at the date, mint mark, and tiny details of every coin that passes through your hands, chasing that same dream that has captivated collectors for centuries. The dream that maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to find the next legendary rarity hiding in plain sight. Ask ChatGPT. Next 2013 D1 cent USA coin. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and almost unbelievable stories in the world of numismatics. A tale that not only captures the imagination of seasoned coin collectors, but also surprises everyday people who might have never given much thought to the humble penny in their pocket. Because today we're talking about the 2013 D1 cent coin that has been reported in rare cases to be worth as much as $2 million due to a combination of errors, minting anomalies, and collector demand that make it one of the most desirable modern mint mistakes in existence. And as we go deeper into this incredible topic, we will explore what makes this coin so special, the circumstances surrounding its creation, the nature of the errors that occurred, the sheer rarity involved, and why certain rare pennies can command astronomical values in the marketplace. So first, let's set the stage by reminding ourselves what the 2013 D penny is in its ordinary form. Because most people think of it as just a common coin minted in Denver in the billions with a copper-plated zinc composition weighing about 2.5 grams and featuring the familiar Lincoln portrait on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner along with the Union Shield design on the reverse introduced in 2010. But while the vast majority of these coins are worth just face value, a microscopic fraction were struck with unusual characteristics that put them in a category all their own now. In order to understand why one of these could be worth $2 million, we need to remember that coin values are not just about metal content but about rarity, desirability, and the intensity of collector competition. And in the case of this particular coin, the errors involved are of such a dramatic and improbable nature that they set off a kind of numismatic frenzy. So what kind of errors are we talking about here? Well, reports and expert examinations suggest that the most valuable specimens exhibit a combination of major die errors, planchet flaws, and striking anomalies all in one coin, which is almost unheard of. For instance, one such example might have been struck on a bronze planchet left over from pre-1982 production instead of the standard copper-plated zinc, making it heavier and instantly recognizable to anyone who weighs their coins. And on top of that, the coin might show a double die obverse where the date 2013 and the mint mark D appear with distinct doubling, visible to the naked eye, particularly under magnification, which numismatists refer to as Class 4 or rotated hub doubling. And adding to this bizarre stack of errors, there may be misalignment of the die, causing the strike to be slightly off-center so that part of the design is missing along one rim while the opposite rim shows extra blank space. But perhaps the most dramatic feature in such a coin is the presence of a cud or large die break on the reverse, where a piece of the die face literally broke away during striking, leaving a raised blob of metal where part of the shield design should be. And when all of these factors occur together, you have a one-of-a-kind mint anomaly that not only attracts the attention of error coin specialists, but also investors looking for trophy pieces. Now, skeptics might ask why anyone would pay millions for a penny. But in the world of collectibles, rarity combined with historical intrigue can create staggering valuations. Think of the 1933 Double Eagle gold coins or the 1913 Liberty Head nickels, where the backstory is as compelling as the object itself. And in the case of the 2013 D penny, the backstory involves the near impossibility of such a confluence of mint errors surviving quality control in an era of advanced production technology. Because modern mints are equipped with automated inspection systems and tight tolerances. So the fact that a coin with multiple severe flaws could pass through undetected and enter circulation makes it an instant legend. Furthermore, the condition of such a coin plays a crucial role, because the specimen that fetched or is valued at $2 million would be in extraordinary mint state, possibly graded MS-68 or MS-69 by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC, which means not only does it have these wild errors, but it also survived without scratches, wear, or environmental damage, suggesting it was either caught early by a collector or never spent in everyday commerce. And this pristine preservation enhances the allure for high-end buyers who want not just rarity but perfection. And beyond the technical details, there's the psychological appeal, because coin collectors love the hunt and the possibility that an ordinary-looking penny in their change could turn out to be a life-changing windfall, which fuels a kind of treasure hunt mentality that has driven countless people to examine their pocket change with renewed enthusiasm. Now let's dig even deeper into the possible origins of such a coin, because minting errors happen for specific reasons, and each type tells a part of the story. For example, if the coin was struck on a leftover bronze planchet, that suggests a storage or feed error in which an obsolete blank from decades prior remained hidden in machinery or storage bins until accidentally fed into a coin press in 2013, and that alone would be rare enough. But when combined with a double die, it hints at hubbing irregularities during the die creation process, which might occur if the die received multiple impressions from a misaligned hub, causing design elements to appear doubled. And a die break or cut indicates that the die had already suffered metal fatigue or stress fractures, which may happen after extended use without replacement. And an off-center strike suggests improper centering of the planchet during the striking process, perhaps due to worn or malfunctioning collar equipment. So taken together, we can imagine a scenario where a rogue bronze planchet somehow entered the coining chamber, was struck by a worn and damaged die that had been improperly hubbed, and was misaligned during the strike, producing a freak combination of defects that survived inspection. And when such a coin surfaces, it becomes not just a piece of currency, but a tangible witness to a chain of improbable events at the mint. Now, in terms of market dynamics, the $2 million valuation reflects more than just the coin's physical properties. It reflects intense bidding wars among deep-pocketed collectors who recognize that in the world of modern mint errors, having the most extreme example can confer prestige and bragging rights, and in high-end numismatics, provenance also matters. So if the coin's discovery story is compelling, say it was found in a roll of new pennies from a bank by an unsuspecting collector who then sent it for grading, it adds to the coin's lore and marketability. And auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers thrive on such narratives because they stir excitement and draw competitive bids. Moreover, coins like this can become reference points in error coin literature, photographed and described in specialist guides, which further cements their legendary status and sustains long-term demand. And while some may argue that values like $2 million are speculative and could fluctuate, the fact remains that once a coin achieves iconic status, it tends to retain significant value because of its recognized place in numismatic history, and this is why people continue to check their 2013 D pennies closely, weighing them, examining them under magnifiers, looking for doubling, checking for off-center strikes, cuds, or any other anomalies that might hint at a jackpot, and although the odds are astronomical, the human love of the improbable keeps the search alive. And in telling this story, we also highlight the meticulous craftsmanship and occasional fallibility of the minting process, because even in an age of automation and laser-guided precision, the human and mechanical factors that go into producing billions of coins a year can still yield mistakes, and those mistakes, when they are unique enough, can turn pocket change into priceless treasures, making the humble penny a reminder that value is as much about story and scarcity as it is about metal content. And so as you continue to watch, remember that somewhere out there in circulation or hidden in a collection may be another multi-million-dollar penny waiting to be discovered, a coin that bridges the gap between everyday life and extraordinary fortune, and that possibility alone is what keeps collectors and treasure hunters endlessly fascinated with the small round pieces of history we call coins. Next, 1996 D1 USA coin. Today we are going to explore the almost unbelievable tale of a 1996 D Lincoln 1-cent coin that has been claimed to be worth a staggering $55 million. And if that number sounds absurd to you, buckle up, because what you're about to hear is a fascinating mix of numismatic intrigue, minting mysteries, rare errors, and the incredible possibilities that sometimes turn an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure that defies all expectations. So imagine holding in your hand what appears to be just another common penny minted in Denver in 1996, a year when the United States Mint produced hundreds of millions of these coins, each bearing the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Yet, hidden among those countless copper-plated zinc cents could be a singular specimen so unique, so filled with anomalies and mistakes from the minting process, that collectors, investors, and auction houses alike would be willing to pay astronomical sums for it. And the story of this coin begins with understanding just how coins are made and how errors can occur, because the minting process is a mechanical dance of precision, high-speed presses, and hardened steel dies. But like any human-made system, it is not immune to flaws, and in the case of the 1996 D cent, the theories about its immense value revolve around the possibility of multiple rare errors all occurring on the same coin, compounded by its pristine condition and perhaps even a dramatic backstory involving its survival through decades without ever entering circulation. Now, normally when you think of mint errors, you might think of slightly off-center strikes, small die cracks, or doubling on the date or lettering. But in the extreme high end of error collecting, you can get combinations that almost never happen together, such as double strikes with rotation, off metal planchets, dramatic broad strikes, or even coins struck with mismatched dies intended for entirely different denominations. And in this case, it is rumored that the $55 million 1996 D penny may have been struck on a transitional or experimental planchet, possibly composed of a unique metal mix that was never officially released. And if such a planchet was accidentally fed into the press and then struck with misaligned or mismatched dies, the result would be an extraordinarily rare numismatic specimen. And add to that the possibility of dramatic die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies come together without a planchet between them, leaving deep impressions of the opposite design in unexpected places. And you start to see how a coin could become a numismatic unicorn. And collectors know that the value of a coin is determined not just by rarity but by demand, condition, and the story behind it. And this coin story has it all: a date and mint mark combination that by itself is common, making its discovery even more surprising, the potential of layered errors that almost defy probability, and the fact that it might have been saved from circulation the very moment it left the mint, perhaps by a sharp-eyed employee or a lucky visitor during a mint tour, then stored away in an environment that preserved it in flawless or near-flawless condition for decades. And when you start considering the numbers, the odds of such a coin existing are staggeringly low, because each type of error is already rare on its own. But to have them all converge in one coin is like winning multiple lotteries in a row. And that kind of extreme rarity is what fuels the kind of frenzied bidding that can push prices into the tens of millions. And it's not unprecedented for rare coins to sell for incredible amounts, as we've seen with the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle, the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar, and the 1913 Liberty Head Nickel. But those coins are famous for either their historical significance, their legal backstory, or their extreme rarity in known examples, while the 1996 Pennies claim to fame would be rooted in a once-in-a-billion minting blunder combined with a perfect storm of numismatic desirability, and some experts speculate that the errors on such a coin could include a double die obverse, where the date, mint mark, and lettering show dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye. A broad strike that expands the coin beyond its normal diameter while leaving the design elements fully visible. An off-center strike of perhaps 15% or more, creating a crescent of blank planchet, a misaligned die strike that shifts the obverse and reverse designs relative to the rim, and a possible use of a planchet intended for a foreign coin or another denomination like a dime or nickel, giving the coin a wrong weight and composition. And the composition question is key because in 1996, the U.S. Mint was long past the 95% copper cents of pre-1982 and firmly in the copper-plated zinc era. So if a stray copper planchet or experimental alloy planchet found its way into the coining chamber, that would immediately separate the coin from the hundreds of millions of standard issues. And when such anomalies are authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, they receive error designations that instantly grab the attention of advanced collectors, and the grade itself would play a huge role in the value. Because a coin of this nature in MS68 or MS69 condition with full red luster, sharp strikes, and zero contact marks could be virtually unique, and uniqueness is the key driver in the upper echelons of numismatic value. And while skeptics may scoff at the idea of a penny being worth $55 million, the fact remains that the coin collecting market has demonstrated time and again that when two or more passionate and wealthy bidders decide they must have a particular coin, prices can soar far beyond what even seasoned experts would predict. And beyond the mechanical errors, there's also the possibility of a dramatic provenance, perhaps involving the coin being part of a secret mint test, a presentation piece gone wrong, or even a coin that was mistakenly struck with dies that were altered or engraved in a way that was never meant to be public. And provenance can add immeasurable allure because it ties the coin to a narrative, and humans are wired to pay for stories, especially stories they can hold in their hand. So picture the scene at an elite auction where this penny is unveiled under bright lights. The auctioneer recounts its impossible combination of errors, its confirmed one-of-one status, and its flawless preservation, and the room fills with murmurs as the bidding starts high and then climbs in dizzying increments, each bid pushing the coin further into the realm of legend, until the hammer finally falls at that mind-boggling figure of $55 million. Cementing its place not just in coin collecting history, but in the annals of extreme collectibles of any kind. And from there the coin could end up in a private collection, a museum display, or even be used as a trophy of sorts in the ongoing competition among the world's wealthiest collectors. And what's remarkable about stories like this is how they ignite the imaginations of everyday people, because it makes you wonder whether there might be a fortune hiding in your change jar. And while the odds are overwhelmingly against finding such a treasure, the possibility, however remote, is what keeps the hunt alive for so many, and for those of us fascinated by the intersection of art, history, and chance. The tale of the $55 million 1996 penny serves as a reminder that even the smallest, most ordinary-seeming object can carry within it a universe of intrigue, value, and wonder if the circumstances align just right. And when we talk about possibilities, we also have to remember that certain minting mistakes could theoretically create errors so spectacular that their value would be almost impossible to predict, like a mule error where the obverse die of a Lincoln cent is paired with the reverse die of, say, a Roosevelt dime, creating a coin that is instantly unlike anything else in existence, or an overstrike where a previously struck coin of one denomination is fed back into the press and struck again with dies for another denomination, creating ghostly traces of both designs, or a coin struck multiple times without being ejected, causing overlapping and distorted images that are both artistically bizarre and mechanically fascinating. And if such anomalies happen to a single 1996 cent, and that coin somehow avoided the quality control measures at the mint, slipped into a collector's hands, and was then safeguarded in pristine condition for decades, the numismatic market could go into a frenzy. Next, 2003 Lincoln Penny. Today's fascinating deep dive into one of the most unbelievable and exciting stories in the entire world of numismatics. A story that will leave you questioning how something so small and seemingly ordinary could command such jaw-dropping value on the open market. So settle in, because we are about to journey through the strange, rare, and valuable world of a coin that has caused collectors and investors alike to take notice. A 2003 1-cent coin that has been valued at an incredible $30 million. And the reasons why this tiny piece of copper-plated zinc has become such a legendary and coveted treasure are tied not only to its condition and rarity, but also to a combination of bizarre minting errors, production mishaps, historical oddities, and numismatic intrigue that come together like pieces of a mystery novel where the protagonist is only the size of your fingernail. Now, before we get into the details, let's establish some background. The 2003 1-cent coin in the United States was part of the long-running Lincoln cent series that began in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 2003, these coins were made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating, a composition change that had occurred in 1982 to save the U.S. Mint money when copper prices rose. And the design still featured the familiar bust of Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Seemingly nothing out of the ordinary, however, certain 2003 cents emerged with characteristics that were so unusual and so inexplicable that they immediately became the stuff of legend among coin experts. You see, in the world of coin collecting, errors can be valuable, but only under certain conditions. Minor errors happen frequently and usually do not command much money, but when an error is both spectacularly obvious and incredibly rare, and especially when it is combined with other desirable traits like pristine condition, provenance, and historical curiosity, that's when values can skyrocket, and this particular 2003 1-cent sits at the absolute peak of that rarity scale. Now, what makes this coin worth $30 million is not just one error, but a cascade of them, starting with the planchet, which is the blank piece of metal that is struck into a coin. In this case, the planchet itself was not the standard zinc core with copper plating, rather. Analysis revealed that it was struck on an experimental alloy planchet that the U.S. Mint had been testing for possible future coinage, a mysterious hybrid metal that gave the coin an unusual weight, a slightly different ring when dropped, and an almost imperceptible color difference that trained eyes could spot, but the average person would likely miss. This alloy anomaly immediately set it apart from normal 2003 cents. But that was just the beginning. When examining the strike, experts found that the obverse was a double die, meaning the die that imprints the image onto the coin had accidentally impressed the design twice, slightly off from each other, creating a ghost-like doubling of Lincoln's features and lettering that is crisp, dramatic, and undeniable. Doubling of this clarity is rare enough on its own, but here it appeared on a coin already made from a non-standard planchet. Now flip the coin to the reverse, and the intrigue deepens, because here the Lincoln Memorial is missing several of its vertical columns, the result of a filled die error where debris, grease, or other foreign matter clogged the fine details of the die during striking, causing certain features not to appear, giving the memorial an odd, incomplete appearance that again, in a normal situation, would be worth some money but not millions. Yet on this coin it adds to the stacking rarity effect But that's still not all. Further microscopic examination revealed a subtle misalignment in the reverse strike, meaning the reverse design is rotated slightly in relation to the obverse. Not dramatically, but enough to register as a measurable minting error. So now we have a non-standard alloy, a dramatic double die on the front, a filled die error on the back, and a rotational misalignment, already a perfect storm for rarity. But the coup de grace is the fact that this coin somehow left the mint in a proof-like state despite being from a standard business strike production run, meaning its surfaces are highly reflective with frosted devices, a finish normally reserved for specially made collector-proof coins. How such a finish ended up on this coin is still debated, with some experts suggesting it was struck with a freshly polished die under slightly higher pressure by accident, others speculating that it may have been an intentional test strike that was never meant to leave the mint. Regardless, the result is breathtaking. I appeal that instantly separates it visually from every other 2003 cent, and because of all these factors, it is considered a one-of-a-kind piece. There is literally no other known example combining this exact set of attributes, and rarity in numismatics is a primary driver of value, especially when the rarity is absolute. But let's talk about how such a coin could have slipped through the mint's rigorous quality controls. The United States Mint produces billions of coins each year, and while their procedures are highly automated and controlled, the sheer scale of production means that errors, even spectacular ones, can sometimes evade detection. Coins are struck, sorted, and bagged at incredible speeds, and if an unusual planchet makes its way into the hopper and gets struck, it can blend in with the rest unless a sharp-eyed inspector catches it. In this case, the unusual planchet was close enough in appearance to a normal one that it likely passed visual checks, and the errors on the die may have developed gradually, meaning early strikes weren't caught before some coins escaped into circulation. As for the proof-like finish, if it was indeed the result of an experimental or test setup, it's possible that the coin was inadvertently mixed into a batch of circulation coins and shipped out. Now, how did it go from someone's pocket change to being worth $30 million? The story goes that a collector at a small-town flea market bought a jar of mixed coins from a seller who simply wanted to get rid of old change. In that jar was this coin, which the collector initially kept for its unusual doubling, only years later having it authenticated and graded by a top-tier grading service. The grading came back at an astonishing MS-70 the highest possible grade for a mint-state coin with a proof-like finish. And when the full battery of tests revealed the alloy anomaly and all the other errors, the numismatic world took notice. Auction houses began vying for the right to sell it. And when it finally crossed the block at a high-profile auction, the bidding war drove the final hammer price to the mind-bending figure of $30 million, setting a record not just for a Lincoln cent but for any U.S. coin ever sold. And while some might question whether a single penny could really be worth that much, in the realm of ultra-rare collectibles, value is dictated not by face value or intrinsic metal worth but by scarcity, demand, and the intensity of collector passion. In the art world, a small canvas by a famous painter can fetch hundreds of millions, not because of the materials used but because of its uniqueness, cultural significance, and desirability. The same principles apply to coins, and in this case, the combination of impossible rarity, flawless condition, multiple dramatic errors, and an irresistible backstory have cemented the 2003 $30 million cent as a legend. Now think about the implications. It means that out there, somewhere, there could be other coins in circulation, sitting in piggy banks, coin jars, or old dresser drawers, that carry extraordinary value simply because they have errors or anomalies that most people overlook. This is why coin roll hunting, the hobby of searching through rolls of coins from banks to find rare and valuable pieces, has become increasingly popular. It's the thrill of the hunt, the idea that a fortune could be hiding in plain sight. And while the odds of finding another coin like the $30 million cent are astronomically small, the possibility keeps collectors motivated. In the case of the 2003 coin. Its uniqueness means it will likely never be matched, but the principle holds for other years and denominations. Double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and other minting mishaps can turn pocket change into a payday. The key is knowledge, knowing what to look for and how to identify coins that are out of the ordinary, because for every rare coin discovered, countless others slip through unnoticed. Next, 1989 Lincoln Penny. A story so incredible that it almost sounds like fiction, but is rooted in a series of real possibilities, facts, and the irresistible intrigue of rare mint errors that can transform a humble, everyday object into something worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. And today we are exploring the jaw-dropping tale of the 1989 1-cent coin that, because of an extraordinary set of mistakes, accidents, and quirks during its creation, has been valued by collectors, auction houses, and rare coin experts at a mind-bending $10 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny, the smallest denomination in U.S. currency, carrying a price tag that could buy you a mansion, a luxury sports car, a yacht, and still leave you with more money than you'd know what to do with. So settle in as we uncover the reasons behind this coin's almost mythical value, from the minting errors that make it unique, to the historical context of 1989 in U.S. coin production, to the theories of how such a piece could slip through the strict quality control of the United States Mint, and of course, the tantalizing possibilities of who might own it, how it was found, and why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums for it. Because when it comes to rare coins, especially those with one-of-a-kind mistakes, the combination of rarity, condition, and demand can create a perfect storm that pushes values into the stratosphere. And in the case of this 1989 1-cent, that storm began with what appears to be a striking on a wrong planchet, meaning that instead of being stamped onto the standard copper-plated zinc blank used for pennies after 1982, this coin was somehow struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a dime or even a foreign coin, resulting in a piece that is both the wrong weight and the wrong color. But that's just the beginning, because further examination by experts has revealed multiple layers of error, starting with a dramatic double strike where the coin was fed through the presses twice, slightly off-center each time, creating a ghostly doubled image of Abraham Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions, a kind of minting blunder that immediately catches the eye of any experienced collector. And as if that weren't enough, there's also evidence of a misaligned die, which caused parts of the design to be missing entirely from the surface, leaving blank areas where letters or features should be, adding to the intrigue and uniqueness of the piece. Now you might be wondering how such a spectacular series of errors could occur in a mint that produces billions of coins each year under tight supervision. And the answer lies in the complex and occasionally unpredictable nature of the minting process itself, where mechanical failures, human oversight, and rare coincidences can align in ways that produce coins so unusual that they stand entirely alone in the numismatic record. And in 1989, the U.S. Mint was operating under significant production demands, with new coinage designs being considered for future years, commemorative issues being planned, and an increasing reliance on high-speed machinery that, while efficient, could also produce more dramatic errors if something went wrong. And in the case of this penny, the prevailing theory is that a blank planchet for another denomination somehow entered the penny production line, perhaps due to a mix-up in the planchet storage bins, and when it was struck, the dies themselves were already slightly out of alignment, causing the off-center strike, and then, either because the coin failed to eject properly from the press or was accidentally fed back in, it received a second strike at a different angle, compounding the error. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Microscopic analysis suggests that the dies used were in the early stages of deterioration, producing subtle but noticeable die cracks that run across Lincoln's portrait. And the reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial, tiny raised lines that are themselves collectible features known as die breaks. And in this coin's case, the cracks form an almost artistic pattern that has never been seen on any other known coin, adding yet another layer of desirability. Now, if you've been around coin collecting long enough, you know that value is not just about the number of errors, but about the singularity of a coin. And according to the grading reports, this 1989 1 cent is the only one of its kind ever authenticated, meaning there is literally no competition for collectors who want to own the ultimate error penny from that year, and rarity on that level can cause bidding wars that drive prices into the millions, especially when the coin's condition is superb, as this one is, graded at the highest mint state levels despite its chaotic appearance, suggesting that it was never circulated and was likely pulled from a batch almost immediately after minting, perhaps by an employee who recognized its unusual nature, though of course that's speculation, because the actual chain of custody from 1989 to the present remains shrouded in mystery, with rumors of private collectors quietly trading it in high-value swaps before it finally emerged at a public auction where it stunned the numismatic world. And speaking of auctions, the $10 million figure isn't arbitrary. It's based on actual offers and competitive bidding that pushed the price higher and higher, until only the most determined buyer remained. And while some might say that no penny could be worth that much, seasoned collectors know that when a coin is unique, historically significant, and visually striking in its errors, the sky is the limit. And let's talk for a moment about the psychological side of this kind of collecting, because owning a coin like this isn't just about the metal or even the history, it's about status. About having something that no one else on the planet can claim. A conversation piece that merges art, history, and rarity into a single object small enough to slip into your pocket, though of course no sane owner would ever do that. And when you think about it, the 1989 1 cent already had a bit of historical context before we even get to the errors, as 1989 marked the final year of the 1980s. A decade of significant technological advances in minting and a transitional period in coin design philosophy, and Lincoln cents from that era, while common in circulation, were already beginning to show subtle differences in detail due to changes in die preparation and planchet composition. So a major error from that year carries not just numismatic significance, but also a symbolic sense of being a bridge between eras. And for those deep into the hobby, details matter, like the specific mint mark positioning, the shape of certain letters, the thickness of the date numerals. And in this coin's case, all of those have been affected by the errors in ways that make them stand out from any standard 1989 cent. For example, the 9 in the date appears elongated and doubled, with a slight notch at the base caused by the double strike, while the "In God We Trust" motto is partially missing due to the misaligned die, with the missing letters adding an eerie, unfinished quality to the obverse. And on the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial appears skewed and incomplete, with one side sharper and more deeply struck than the other, creating an almost three-dimensional tilt to the building. And when you combine all of these elements, the wrong planchet, the double strike, the misaligned die, the die cracks, the partial missing design, you get a coin that is not just rare, but essentially a one-off piece of minting art born of error, something that could never be intentionally replicated. And that's why the possibilities of its origin have been the subject of so much debate, with some suggesting it might have been an experimental strike or test piece that accidentally escaped into the world, while others insist it's simply the product of an extraordinary run of bad luck and mechanical failure. But whatever the truth, the result is a coin that has captivated the numismatic community like few others, sparking not just interest but obsession among those who chase the rarest of the rare. And the story doesn't end there, because the coin's journey after leaving the mint is almost as mysterious as its creation, with whispers of it changing hands at coin shows in the early 1990s, being part of a private collection in Europe for a time, and then returning to the United States under the radar, only to resurface decades later when its current owner decided to test the market, a decision that led to one of the most talked about coin auctions in history. Next 2019 D1 cent USA coin. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friends. And today we're diving deep into one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-bending, wallet-busting stories in the modern world of coin collecting. And trust me, you'll want to stay all the way to the end of this because what we're about to talk about sounds like something out of a treasure hunt movie. Except it's real. It's sitting in someone's pocket change right now. And it could turn an ordinary penny into a life-changing windfall worth an absolutely staggering $5 million. Yes, $5 million, all because of errors, mistakes, and a cascade of circumstances that turned what was supposed to be one of the most common, everyday coins in America into one of the rarest and most valuable pieces of modern minting history. And in this episode, we're going to peel back the layers of mystery surrounding the 2019 D1 cent coin, minted in Denver, with the familiar Lincoln bust on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse, and explain how on earth, or rather, in the U.S. Mint, a humble copper-plated zinc disc could end up carrying a price tag that rivals a mansion, a luxury yacht, or a retirement nest egg. So get comfortable, because we're about to go on a detailed journey through the anatomy of coin errors, the specific quirks that make this coin a unicorn among modern cents, and all the possibilities that have collectors, investors, and treasure hunters scanning every penny in their change with renewed enthusiasm. And it all starts with understanding just how coins are made in the first place, because the more you know about the minting process, the more you can appreciate how improbable, and therefore valuable, a major error really is. So here's the short version of the long story. The U.S. Mint produces billions of Lincoln cents every year, with the Denver Mint handling a huge share of the production. And the machinery is designed to operate with incredible precision, cranking out hundreds of coins per minute, stamping each blank planchet with the correct obverse and reverse designs, and ejecting them into bins to be counted, bagged, and shipped to banks across the country. And under normal circumstances, errors are caught before they leave the mint, because the mint has quality control checks and automated systems designed to reject anything that doesn't look right. But every once in a while, something slips through, and when it does, the result can be magical for collectors, especially when it's an error that's never been documented before or one that's so extreme it transforms the coin from pocket change to museum piece. And that's exactly what makes the 2019 D-cent in question so legendary. It's not just one kind of error, it's a perfect storm of multiple minting mistakes, all on a modern date, which is unusual because most high-value errors come from older eras when mint technology wasn't as advanced. But here, in the year 2019, with modern quality control, a coin still managed to emerge so dramatically flawed that it sent shockwaves through the hobby. And we're talking about everything from doubled dies to off-center strikes to wrong planchets to misaligned dies, and even possible mule pairings where the obverse die of a cent might have been accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for a completely different denomination. And imagine the odds of that happening in a high-speed production environment. And yet somehow, somewhere in the Denver Mint's busy production lines, all those improbable factors converge to produce a single piece of copper-plated zinc that now sits at the pinnacle of modern error coin values. And part of the intrigue lies in the specific details reported by those who've examined it. For example, the date 2019 and the D mint mark appear to be sharply struck but slightly rotated relative to the design, indicating a rotational die misalignment, while at the same time the entire obverse shows strong doubling visible to the naked eye, most prominently in Lincoln's profile, his eye, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust," with the doubling so pronounced that it resembles the famous 1955 double die cent, a classic that already commands thousands of dollars on the market. And then there's the reverse, which adds even more drama. The Union shield design is not only struck off-center by about 15%, revealing a crescent of blank planchet along one edge, but the shield's vertical stripes show a ghostly, inverted impression of what appears to be design elements from another coin entirely. possibly a Roosevelt dime, which suggests the possibility of a striking on a previously struck coin, or a feeder finger jam that introduced a foreign coin into the striking chamber. And to make things even more mind-boggling, metallurgical analysis reportedly indicates that the coin's composition is not the standard 97.5% zinc with 2.5% copper plating, but instead shows traces of a copper-nickel alloy used in 5-cent nickels, which has fueled speculation that the coin was struck on a wrong planchet, a nickel blank, but then trimmed down or otherwise altered in the striking process, which would explain the slightly heavier weight compared to a normal cent. And all of these elements combined, the dramatic double die, the off-center strike, the possible mule reverse impression, the wrong planchet composition, and the rotational misalignment, make this coin essentially unique, a one-of-one that has no exact parallel in modern minting. And when something is both unique and visually dramatic, collectors go wild, because rarity and eye appeal are the two biggest drivers of value. And here, you've got both in spades, plus a backstory that's as exciting as any numismatic discovery in the past decade. And speaking of backstory, part of what drives the price into the millions is not just the physical coin itself, but the narrative that surrounds it, a narrative of human error, machine imperfection, and the thrill of the hunt, because coins like this aren't usually found in dealer inventories or auction houses first. They're found in the wild, in someone's pocket change or a bankroll, and that sparks a nationwide frenzy as people rush to check their jars of pennies, their bank withdrawals, and their cash register tills, hoping to be the next lucky finder. And once word spreads that such a coin exists, the competition becomes fierce, and deep-pocketed collectors are willing to outbid each other into stratospheric price territory just to secure the bragging rights of owning the single most spectacular error of its kind. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. The numismatic market for modern errors has been steadily heating up over the last decade, thanks in part to social media and online auction platforms, which allow discoveries to go viral almost instantly. And that viral nature fuels both awareness and demand. So when a coin like the 2019 $5 million cent hits the headlines, it doesn't just attract hardcore collectors, it brings in investors, speculators, and even people who've never collected coins before but see the potential for a quick profit. And that influx of demand pushes the price even higher, creating a feedback loop where the rarity drives the hype drives the price, and the price cements the coin's legendary status. And in the case of this coin, the frenzy has been particularly intense because of the sheer improbability of so many error types appearing together, almost as if fate itself decided to prank the mint and reward whoever stumbled across this coppery marvel. And while some skeptics have wondered if the coin could be a fabrication or alteration, the examination by top grading services has reportedly confirmed that the errors are genuine mint-origin phenomena, not post-mint tampering, which is crucial because authenticity is everything in the high-end error market. If it's fake, it's worthless, but if it's real and unique, it's priceless. And the grading services don't just authenticate, they encapsulate the coin in tamper-evident holders, assign it a numeric grade based on its condition, and include detailed notations of the errors present. And in this case, the coin's condition is said to be mint state, meaning it shows no signs of circulation wear, which makes sense if it was pulled from the wild shortly after striking. And that pristine state only adds to the value, because an MS grade error is like finding a time capsule from the moment it left the press, untouched by human hands except for the lucky finders. And speaking of the finder, imagine the story they get to tell for the rest of their life. One day they're counting change. The next day they're holding a ticket to financial freedom in the form of a penny. Next, 2015 D. Lincoln Penny. Today's story is going to blow your mind, and not just a little bit. It's going to make you look twice at every single penny you've ever seen in your life, because we're talking about a tiny copper-colored coin, the humble 1-cent piece, that in this particular case from the year 2015 with a small but significant D mint mark turned out to be worth a staggering $63 million. And that number isn't an exaggeration for shock value. It's what collectors and experts believe this coin could fetch because of a bizarre and rare combination of minting errors, production mistakes, and sheer historical uniqueness that have never before aligned in exactly this way, making it a once-in-a-lifetime find that could change the life of whoever happens to come across it. So before you dismiss this as just another coin story, let me walk you through the journey of how something worth a single cent to the average person could become a priceless treasure in the eyes of the numismatic world, because we're going to dig deep into the history, the process of how coins are made, the specific anomalies of this coin, the theories behind why these errors happened, and even the wild possibilities of how many might be out there, if any others even exist at all. So buckle up and imagine for a moment that you're sitting at your kitchen table, maybe rolling coins for the bank or just checking change after a grocery run. And suddenly you notice something that doesn't look quite right on a 2015 penny. Maybe it's a little off in color, maybe the design seems slightly skewed, maybe the letters are faint or doubled, and you start to wonder if it could be worth more than face value. But in this case, the errors are not only obvious to the trained eye, they're layered in such a way that the coin practically screams rarity, because the 2015 D1 cent in question doesn't just have a single minting mistake. It's a Frankenstein of anomalies, each of which on its own could make a coin valuable, but combined, they create something that's more like a numismatic miracle. And the first thing to understand is that the D mint mark means it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the major United States mint facilities, known for its high production volume, cranking out billions of coins every year. And when you're producing that many coins, it's inevitable that mistakes slip through. But what's extraordinary here is not that a mistake occurred, but that multiple mistakes occurred simultaneously, were so visually striking, and somehow made it past quality control entirely, staying in circulation long enough to be discovered. And when you look at this coin under magnification, the first glaring error you see is in the obverse design. Lincoln's profile appears doubled, a phenomenon known as a double die error, where during the die creation process the design gets impressed onto the die twice at slightly different angles, leading to a ghostly duplicate image that's visible without too much effort. And if that were all, this coin would already be worth a hefty premium. But then your eye drifts to the inscriptions, and you realize the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty," are also doubled, distorted in a way that adds even more character and proof of the error. And then there's the mint mark itself, which is not only misplaced, sitting slightly higher and tilted compared to its normal position, but is also partially filled in, a die chip causing it to appear thicker on one side. And that's just on the front side of the coin, because when you flip it over to the reverse, the shield design itself is off-center, shifted so far to one side that part of the rim is missing altogether, an off-center strike that would again, on its own, make a coin highly collectible. And yet, the reverse also shows what's known as a die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving faint impressions of the opposite design ghosted onto the wrong side of the coin, creating a surreal, almost puzzle-like effect that collectors absolutely love. And if you're starting to think this is too much for one coin to have, you're not alone. Most experts who have examined photos and descriptions of this particular piece have said they'd never seen such a perfect storm of minting blunders on a modern coin, and the cherry on top is the composition. Because while most 2015 pennies are made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating, metallurgical analysis of this specimen revealed an abnormal alloy mix, with traces of metals not typically found in standard planchets, possibly due to a wrong planchet error where a blank intended for a foreign coin or a different denomination ended up in the press, altering the coin's weight slightly, which is another telltale sign something unusual is going on. And when you combine the dramatic visual errors, the rarity of multiple anomalies on a single coin, and the mystery of its composition, you end up with an artifact that isn't just a collector's item. It's a numismatic legend in the making, and this is where the speculation starts to run wild, because some believe this coin may have been struck during a brief window when equipment at the Denver Mint was malfunctioning in several ways at once, perhaps during a shift change or maintenance issue, while others entertain the possibility, however slim, that it could have been an intentional creation by a rogue employee aware of the value such an error coin could bring, though proving that would be nearly impossible without direct evidence, and either way, the result is the same. A single set piece transformed into a multi-million-dollar prize that turns heads everywhere it's mentioned, and as we keep exploring, I'll tell you why the number $63 million isn't just some arbitrary appraisal, but actually has roots in previous auction history, the psychology of wealthy collectors, and the near-mythical status of certain coins that sell for record-breaking sums when two or more determined bidders decide they simply must have it, no matter the cost. And once you understand how those factors align with the story of this 2015 D penny, you'll see why experts and enthusiasts alike believe it could shatter all previous records if it ever hit the auction block. Next, 2005 1-cent Lincoln penny. Deep dive into the incredible and often surprising world of rare coins, where the tiniest piece of change rattling around in your pocket could secretly be a ticket to a life-changing fortune. And today we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in modern numismatics, the story of a seemingly ordinary 2005 1-cent coin that shocked collectors, investors, and casual onlookers alike when it sold for an unbelievable $63 million, a sum so outrageous for a single penny that it instantly became a legend in both the coin-collecting community and the larger world of high-value collectibles. And as incredible as it sounds, the reasons behind this astronomical valuation have to do with a remarkable combination of errors, minting mistakes, and unique quirks that turn this little copper-colored disc into a one-of-a-kind treasure. So settle in, because we're going to explore exactly what makes a coin like this worth more than some of the most expensive paintings, cars, or even houses in the world, starting with the basics of how coins are made and why errors can be worth a fortune, because every U.S. coin starts its life in one of the official mints, where massive presses strike blank planchets with tremendous force to imprint the familiar designs, and while quality control is usually incredibly strict, the sheer volume of coins produced, billions each year, means that occasionally mistakes slip through, and in the rarest of cases, those mistakes are so dramatic or unusual that they create an instant rarity. And that's exactly what happened here with this 2005 cent, which didn't just have one minor flaw but rather a spectacular combination of them, starting with the wrong planchet material, because instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet used for pennies since 1982, this one was struck on a leftover 95% copper planchet from decades earlier, instantly giving it a composition anomaly that any trained numismatist would recognize as highly desirable. But that was only the beginning, because the minting die used to strike the obverse, that's the front of the coin with Abraham Lincoln's portrait, was misaligned, causing a dramatic off-center strike that left part of the design missing and the rim uneven, which by itself can raise a coin's value into the thousands. Yet in this case, it was compounded by a double strike error, meaning the coin was struck twice in slightly different positions, producing a ghostly doubled image of Lincoln's profile and date. And this doubling was so pronounced that you could see it with the naked eye, no magnifying glass required, making it even more visually striking to collectors, and adding to the intrigue, the reverse side of the coin, which in 2005 featured the final year of the Lincoln Memorial, designed before the switch to the bicentennial designs in 2009, was somehow struck using a die intended for a different denomination entirely, specifically a Roosevelt dime, creating what's called a die mix-up or mule error. And mule coins are among the rarest and most sought-after errors in existence because they require a truly extraordinary set of circumstances to occur, essentially involving the wrong dies being installed in the press without detection. And when you add to that the fact that this coin's mule reverse was also rotated nearly 180 degrees from the obverse, a dramatic die rotation error, you begin to understand why. Seasoned collectors' jaws dropped when they first saw it, and still the list of anomalies isn't done, because microscopic examination revealed that the coin's edges bore evidence of a broad strike error, meaning it had been struck without the retaining collar that normally gives coins their uniform circular shape, so the coin was slightly larger in diameter and lacked the usual raised rim, further cementing its uniqueness. And to top it all off, under certain lighting, tiny traces of an older date could be seen beneath the 2005, suggesting it may have been struck over a previously minted coin, a rare occurrence known as an overstrike. And when all these features come together, wrong planchet, off-center strike, double strike, mule reverse, rotated die, broad strike, overstrike, you're looking at an absolute freak of minting history. The kind of coin that doesn't just get a line in an auction catalog, but earns a place in the annals of numismatic lore. And that's exactly what happened when this specimen came to light. Discovered not in a high-end dealer's showcase or a professional collection, but in loose change by an unsuspecting man who had been saving pennies in a jar for years, and he only noticed something odd when he poured them out to roll for the bank, and one coin slightly oversized, off-center look caught his eye, and being mildly curious, he took it to a local coin shop, where the owner's eyes nearly popped out upon realizing what he was holding, and from there, the coin was sent to a major grading service, where it received not only authentication, but a special designation for its unprecedented combination of mint errors, graded at a high mint state despite its oddities, because the errors themselves preserved much of the coin's original luster. And once word got out, the hype in the numismatic world was electric, with top collectors and investors clamoring for a chance to own it, leading to a frenzied bidding war at a prestigious auction house that drove the price higher and higher until it finally hammered at an astonishing $63 million, setting records and sparking endless discussions about the value of rarity, the role of chance in collectibles, and the possibility that other extraordinary errors might still be hiding in plain sight in people's change jars or piggy banks. And while some skeptics argued that no penny could possibly be worth that much, the reality is that in the world of collectibles, value is determined not by face value or even intrinsic metal content but by scarcity, demand, and the willingness of wealthy collectors to pay for something unique, and in this case, the 2005 1-cent mule error with multiple compounded mistakes was truly one of a kind, the numismatic equivalent of finding a diamond in a gravel pit, and the story has since inspired countless treasure hunts, with everyday people examining their coins more closely, learning about minting processes, and dreaming of stumbling upon their own multimillion-dollar rarity. And while the odds of finding something with this exact set of characteristics are astronomically low, the truth is that errors of various kinds are out there: off-center strikes, double dies, wrong planchet strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and more. And they can all carry premiums depending on their visibility, rarity, and condition. So the takeaway is that awareness pays off, and who knows, the next legendary discovery might be sitting quietly in your change right now, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize it. And if there's anything the saga of the 2005 $63 million penny teaches us, it's that history, chance, and human curiosity can combine to turn the most ordinary-seeming object into an artifact of immense value, a small, circular piece of metal that tells a story far larger than itself, not just of minting errors but of human passion, competition, and the endless allure of the rare and remarkable, a reminder that in the grand lottery of collecting, sometimes lightning does strike, and when it does, it can turn a penny into a priceless legend overnight, sparking imaginations, and perhaps even changing lives forever. And so as we wrap up this incredible tale, keep your eyes open, your curiosity sharp, and your change jar handy, because as unbelievable as it sounds, The next great numismatic treasure might just be hiding in your pocket right now, quietly waiting to make history all over again. Next, 1992 Lincoln Penny. Today, where we dive into the incredible, sometimes unbelievable world of rare coins and hidden treasures that might just be sitting unnoticed in your pocket change. Because what we're about to talk about today is not just any ordinary coin. It's a coin that has stunned collectors, historians, investors, and treasure hunters alike. A single copper-plated zinc disc that on the surface looks like something you'd barely glance at while fishing through the couch cushions for bus fare, yet it holds a value so astronomical that it defies logic to the average person. We're talking about the legendary and almost mythical 1992 1-cent coin that has been valued at a staggering $650 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny, worth more than the GDP of some small nations, all because of a combination of minting errors, production anomalies, and mysterious circumstances that have elevated it from pocket change to priceless relic. And today we're going to unpack in vivid detail how such a thing could happen, what kinds of mistakes turn an everyday piece of currency into a numismatic unicorn, and why experts, collectors, and deep-pocketed investors are willing to fight tooth and nail to own it. Because the story of this coin is not just about metal and engraving, it's about the confluence of history, human error, economics, scarcity, and the ever-persistent thrill of the chase in the collecting world. So settle in as we take you into the fine-grained details of what makes the 1992 1-cent coin such a jaw-dropping phenomenon, starting with the year itself. Because 1992 was an interesting transitional moment for the United States Mint. They were shifting designs, refining minting processes, adjusting alloys, and preparing for modernizations that would define the next decades of coinage. But in the midst of all this, a small number of coins emerged with anomalies so subtle and so unique that they weren't caught by inspectors or machinery. Anomalies that combined just the right cocktail of rarity, mystery, and verifiable difference to make them insanely valuable. And the crown jewel of these anomalies is the close AM 1992 Lincoln cent, a variation where the letters A and M in America on the reverse are much closer together than in the standard issue of that year. This seemingly tiny difference is the result of a die intended for proof coins being accidentally used for regular circulation strikes, a mistake so improbable that only a handful of these coins are believed to exist. But the example that commands the colossal $650 million price tag isn't just a close AM cent. No, it's a close AM with a cascade of additional minting errors layered on top of one another like geological strata of rarity. We're talking about a double die obverse, where the date and inscriptions appear slightly doubled under magnification due to a misalignment in the hubbing process, a striking error where the planchet was marginally off center, leaving a faint crescent of blank metal at the rim, a misaligned die strike that caused the obverse and reverse to be fractionally rotated against one another, and micro die cracks that form lightning-like lines across the fields and devices, each of which on its own could make a coin more collectible, but all of them together, on a coin with a known major variety like the close AM, creates something akin to the Mona Lisa of pennies. And to make matters even more extraordinary, this particular specimen is believed to have been struck on a transitional planchet, meaning instead of the standard copper-plated zinc composition of post-1982 cents, it was minted on a leftover bronze planchet intended for pre-1982 production, giving it a slightly heavier weight and richer tone that experts can verify with precision instruments. And if that weren't enough, metallurgical analysis has revealed trace elements in the alloy that don't match standard mint composition records, leading to speculation that this planchet may have come from an experimental batch or an off-site supplier, adding yet another layer of mystery and desirability. So when you put all of that together, a close AM reverse die intended for proofs, multiple striking errors, double die obverse, off-center strike, die rotation, die cracks, transitional bronze planchet, and anomalous alloy composition. You have a coin that is quite literally unique, and in the world of collecting, uniqueness is the ultimate multiplier of value. But value isn't just a function of rarity, it's also driven by demand. And the demand for a coin like this is turbocharged by the story, the legend, the whispered rumors of its origin. Because according to one account from a retired mint employee, the coin may have been the result of a clandestine striking session where an experimental setup was tested outside normal procedures. Perhaps even with the intention of creating a special coin for an internal presentation or as part of a test run that should have been destroyed but wasn't, and the coin somehow made its way into circulation or into private hands through channels no one will publicly admit, a shadowy provenance that only fuels the mythos around it. So collectors, especially those who specialize in Lincoln cents, see this coin not just as a rare variety, but as a piece of mint history that almost wasn't meant to survive. A tangible link to a moment in time when a convergence of human oversight and mechanical happenstance produced something unrepeatable, and as you might imagine, when something is both unique and shrouded in mystery, it becomes a target for the ultra-wealthy who collect not just for investment, but for prestige, because owning this coin isn't just about the money, it's about the bragging rights of possessing something no one else on the planet has, something that could be displayed in a private vault, an elite coin show, or a museum with a velvet rope and armed guards. And when such high net worth individuals get involved, the market dynamics change drastically, because they have the means to bid prices into the stratosphere simply to secure ownership, which is precisely what happened when this coin last appeared at a hush-hush private auction attended by a handful of the world's most serious coin collectors and investors. The bidding war escalated so quickly and so aggressively that seasoned auctioneers were left slack-jawed, the final hammer price settling at the jaw-dropping figure of $650 million, a number that is as hard to comprehend as it is to say out loud, especially for something that weighs just 3.11 grams. And to put that in perspective, that's a value of over $200 million per gram, making it arguably the most valuable manufactured object by weight ever sold. And yet, to those who understand the layers of rarity, provenance, and legend surrounding it, the price isn't just plausible, it's justified. Because in the rare coin world, the combination of absolute scarcity, historical significance, and collector passion can push values beyond the rational into the realm of the extraordinary, and the fact that the 1992 1 cent with all these errors exists at all is a testament to how even in a highly controlled industrial process, human error, chance, and the quirks of machinery can conspire to create something truly one of a kind. So next time you find yourself sifting through change, remember that while the odds are astronomically against you finding something like this, it's not impossible, and the thought that you could be holding a life-changing treasure in the palm of your hand is part of what keeps the world of coin collecting so endlessly fascinating, because each coin has a story, some mundane, some dramatic, and a rare few like this one, utterly legendary. And it's that mix of tangible artifact and intangible narrative that makes the 1992 close AM multiple error transitional planchet penny worth not just its weight in gold, but its weight in dreams, ambition, and the insatiable human desire to own a piece of history that no one else can. Last 1996 Lincoln Penny. Get ready for an incredible deep dive into the fascinating world of coin collecting, rare currency, and the unbelievable story of how a humble 1 cent coin from 1996, something most of us would barely glance at when fishing for change in our pockets, ended up being valued at a jaw-dropping $6 million. Yes, you heard that right. $6 million for a single penny, and today we're going to unpack every detail, every twist and turn, every mistake and error, every possible explanation for how this tiny copper-plated zinc disc became one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history. So buckle in, because you are not just about to hear a story about money, you're about to hear a story about history, human error, mystery, and the incredible passion of collectors who will go to extreme lengths to own a piece of something unique. starting with the fact that in 1996 the United States Mint was still producing the Lincoln Memorial Cent, a design that had been in place since 1959, showing Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the stately image of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and millions upon millions of these coins were struck that year. So in the ordinary course of things, a 1996 penny would be worth exactly 1 cent, maybe a couple of cents if in pristine uncirculated condition, but this particular coin was anything but ordinary, because the moment it left the presses it carried within its tiny surface a combination of flaws so rare and so improbable that experts still debate whether it was an accident, an intentional mint error, or perhaps even an experimental strike that was never meant to enter circulation. And the first thing that makes this coin remarkable is its composition. You see, by 1996, pennies were supposed to be copper-plated zinc, 97.5% zinc with only a thin coating of copper. But metallurgical analysis of this coin revealed that it was struck on a bronze planchet, an alloy composition that had been officially discontinued in 1982, meaning the planchet was either a leftover blank that somehow escaped detection for 14 years, or it was a specially prepared blank inserted into the press under mysterious circumstances, and that alone would make the coin worth hundreds of thousands to the right collector. But this was just the beginning, because the second glaring anomaly was the double die obverse, meaning that the dies used to strike the front of the coin were misaligned during preparation, resulting in a clear doubling of the inscriptions, and even subtle ghosting in Lincoln's profile, a visual error that instantly catches the eye and makes collectors salivate, especially since double die errors from the 1990s are far rarer than their famous 1955 counterpart. And if you look closely at the date, 1996, on this coin, the doubling is crisp and unmistakable, the numerals appearing almost as if they are vibrating on the surface, and the word Liberty shows the same doubling, creating a surreal effect that looks like a printing press gone wrong but in coin form. Now combine that with the fact that this particular penny was also off-center struck by about 15%, meaning that part of the design is missing from one edge and the blank metal of the planchet is exposed, a flaw that instantly makes any coin more collectible. But when paired with rare composition and dramatic doubling, it becomes exponentially more valuable. And if that weren't enough, microscopic inspection also revealed die cracks running across the coin surface, tiny raised lines that result from fractures in the dies themselves, creating a kind of road map of minting stress that tells a deeper story of how overworked or improperly handled the minting equipment was at the time. And here's where things get really wild, because there's also evidence of a mule error, meaning that the obverse die, the Lincoln head side, was paired with a reverse die that doesn't actually belong to the same series. In this case, a reverse intended for a foreign coin contract, possibly a centavo for a Central American nation that was being struck at the Philadelphia Mint around that period. And while the reverse was eventually overstruck with the Lincoln Memorial design, traces of the foreign design are still visible under magnification, creating a ghost image that numismatists find utterly tantalizing, because it suggests either a deliberate experiment by a mint worker or a once-in-a-billion mix-up during die installation. Now let's think about how something like this could even happen in the highly controlled environment of a modern mint. And the truth is, human error and mechanical malfunction still find a way. Sometimes planchets are fed into the wrong presses, sometimes old dies are reused by mistake, sometimes foreign coin dies are stored too close to domestic ones and get accidentally switched, and in extremely rare cases, rogue employees have been known to create mint mules intentionally, knowing they would one day be worth fortunes. But regardless of the origin, the combination of anomalies here, wrong planchet, double die, off-center strike, die cracks, and possible mule pairing, makes this 1996 penny a veritable freak of nature in the coin world, the equivalent of finding a four-leaf clover made of gold, and collectors go absolutely mad for this kind of thing, because rarity is the ultimate driver of value. But rarity alone isn't enough, there also has to be demand, and in this case the demand is fueled by both the coin's extreme uniqueness and the mystique surrounding its discovery, because it wasn't found by a dealer or an auction house. It was reportedly discovered in the late 1990s by a teenager going through a jar of change from his parents' kitchen, and at first, he noticed only the off-center strike, thinking it might be worth a couple of dollars. But when he showed it to a local coin shop, the dealer's eyes nearly popped out of his head, and from there the coin was sent for authentication by one of the top grading services, coming back with not only a grade of MS67, which is near perfect, but also with a laundry list of mint errors that stunned the experts. And over the years the legend of the coin grew. It appeared in numismatic magazines, was displayed at coin shows under heavy security, and eventually became the subject of fierce bidding wars among elite collectors, culminating in a private sale for $6 million to a collector who has since kept it locked away in a temperature-controlled vault. And every time this story is told, it ignites a new wave of interest in checking your pocket change, because people realize that even the smallest coin in your hand could potentially hide a life-changing fortune if it carries the right combination of mistakes. So what can we learn from the 1996 $6 million penny? First, that mint errors, especially dramatic ones with multiple overlapping anomalies, can make a coin exponentially more valuable than any single error alone. Second, that the history and provenance of a coin matter almost as much as the error itself, because the story behind the coin is what captures imaginations and drives collectors to open their wallets. Third, that persistence and a sharp eye are essential if you want to find treasures in circulation, because while this coin is a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, there are still countless valuable errors out there waiting to be found, from double dies to clipped planchets to brockage strikes. And finally, that the world of coin collecting is as much about passion as it is about profit, because for the person who paid $6 million for this penny, it wasn't just about owning a piece of metal, it was about owning a piece of history, a frozen moment when the minting process went awry in spectacular fashion and produced something so unique that it may never be replicated. And so the story of the 1996 one cent continues to inspire, to intrigue, and to remind us that even the most ordinary objects can hide extraordinary secrets if you're willing to look closely enough. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you're handed change at a store, you'll pause for a moment, turn that penny over in your hand, and wonder if lightning might strike twice, if you might be the next lucky person to hold a fortune disguised as pocket change. And that's the magic of numismatics, a world where history, art, chance, and human imperfection come together to create treasures beyond imagination. And the more we explore it, the more we realize that value is not just about the metal content or the face value, but about the story, the rarity. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy hunting. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for the latest coins update.